Welcome everyone to the Mind, Body, and Soul television show on this beautiful Friday evening. Uh, you are tuned into the Mind, Body, and Soul TV on Conscious Evolution Media Network. I'm your host, Coach Steve Toth, and also the founder of Conscious Evolution Media. And we have a very interesting guest with us, which whom I'm going to introduce in just a minute. So we are right now streaming on consciousevolutionmedia.com as well as YouTube Live and also on Google Hangouts. And our guest this evening is Joshua Shapiro. He is a crystal skull explorer, and we're going to find out a lot more about him as we go along in this conscious hour. Welcome to the show, Joshua.
Thank you, Steve. A pleasure to be here.
Same here. I'm very excited. In the 10 years that we've been broadcasting, this is a first. And, you know, to be completely honest, I like firsts.
Me too. I'm an Aries.
Because you never know. I never know what I'm going to learn and what's going to happen. So here we go. If I took away the title, Crystal Skull Explorer, and any other titles that anybody has ever called you, like, you know, my partner, my friend, my colleague, you know, any other titles that anybody has ever called you, if I take them all away, what's left? Who is really Joshua Shapiro?
Well, I would say I pretty much am a typical Aries person. I like adventure, I like to travel, I like variety, and I like doing a lot of projects at the same time. But what is the highest motivation that's inside of me is to reveal to the public in whatever form I can. And I've been very surprised by, with limited resources, how many things I've been able to do in my 59 years. The best information that will help people to understand, number one, how world peace can happen, and number two, who they are and how powerful that they are. Because I believe we're all family, spiritual family, that we have a piece of Creator inside of us, and we can manifest anything that we can imagine. Matter of fact, anything we can imagine must already exist. Otherwise, we couldn't imagine it. Mm-hmm. So I would say that would be who I am and what motivates me.
Awesome. So let's just take away those two words, limited resources. Because I believe that we have unlimited amount of resources. And right now, this broadcast is going into the ether, and believe it or not, all 7 billion of us on this planet are listening one way or another.
Well, I agree with you 100%. and I recognize, you know, talking about that with those words, it's just trying to express what the experiences have been so far. I expect, and I had a tarot reading once that said one day all the resources of the world would be available to me. So
there you go. You're having them right now.
Yeah.
So let's make the most of it, Joshua. So what was your first contact, and when, most importantly, was your first contact with crystal skulls?
Well, in the 1980s, I was traveling on faith, and just circumstances and experiences would guide me where to go. I was living in Chicago at that time, but the moment where I met the crystal skulls was in San Jose, California. Now, just like everyone else, I'd seen Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World, where they had a picture of the Mitchell Hedges skull that was showing as part of the show, and I remember seeing pictures, but I never had an interest to explore that. So what happened is I have a very good friend. Actually, one of her sons who passed away has the same birthday as I do. She's another Aries, called her bookstore at this time the Ram Metaphysical Bookstore across the street from Rosicrucian Park in San Jose, California. Mm-hmm. And I was going in there to show her my first book that I had written, which is called Journeys of an Aquarian Age Networker. This is back in the early 80s. And it was when I traveled on faith, everything I collected, I figured out how to put it together in a book so it made sense. Because that seems to be the key of who I am. I'm about sharing.
Okay. And great. Well, I want to make sure that we're not running off with a whole bunch of different ideas. So okay. let's just make sure that we clarify for the viewers when can you tell us just a short story? When did you first come into contact with a crystal skull, and where and why? Do you
Okay,
know
well,
today why?
right. So that's what I'm saying. At this bookstore
Hmm.
in April of 1983, after
Hmm.
showing her this book, she took out pictures of an amethyst crystal skull.
Hmm.
And when I was looking at those pictures, I had what I call an inner earthquake. I started vibrating.
Hmm.
Now, what I believe the interpretation of that was is my soul recognized the object that I was looking at, and I was having a reaction. And about 30 minutes later, there was an earthquake in California, so there was a real earthquake. So I had an outer and an inner earthquake. I did not get to see the crystal skull at that time. I was only looking at pictures. However, there was a voice that spoke to me and said, now that you know they exist and you remember, what are you going to do about it? And so, of course, I wanted to see the skull. I had profound experiences when I saw this amethyst skull. It was at an art gallery in San Jose. There were men who were trying to sell it. The only reason I got to see it is because there was a young man in town who they showed it to. I got to touch it, and when I touched the skull on the top part of it with my right arm, the energy went all the way up to my shoulder. And ever since that time, when I think about the skull in my mind's eye, that's where I see it. As I meet different crystal skulls, they appear around my body in a different position. So
Okay,
that
great.
was my
So great. So let's explain to the viewers what is a crystal skull and where do they come from?
okay. So I'm going to show them this crystal skull I have, which is a almost human-sized crystal skull that was made from quartz crystal mined in Brazil by a modern carver, Leandro, who's a friend of mine. So this is what we're talking about, is objects that are made out of quartz crystal that were found in ancient ruins and in the shape of a human bone skull. So that's the simplest explanation. Going forward to today, there are anything that is carved from a gemstone in the shape of a skull, whether it's human, alien, animal. So they're all being called crystal skulls. But I believe the very ancient ones, the most ancient ones, were made from quartz. And so now the story is, well, where did they come from? Who made them? Why were they made, etc. And this is what I've been involved with for over 30 years, coming up with the answers about that.
Okay, awesome. So you've done obviously done lots of research, so that makes you not only qualified, but it makes you have a certain amount of mastery around skulls. I believe that anybody that spends 10 years or 10,000 hours with any subject makes them basically having a PhD. What is special about crystal skulls, Joshua?
Well, excuse me, that's not such an easy question to answer because the crystal skulls are multifaceted in their understanding. They have a, well, I don't know, how can I explain this? They have a living consciousness that gets connected to them because what happens to many people, not only my partner and myself, but we get emails from people all over the world. We've met them in our travels and our public lectures. It seems that the crystal skulls are being used as a receptacle by higher spiritual beings who are interested in assisting humanity. So therefore, when you do scientific tests around them to measure what frequencies of energy do they have and how are they affecting people, they affect people in a multiple of ways. And the
So,
only,
so I just want to share with you that my body is vibrating already.
yeah, I would imagine
So
so.
internally, I'm feeling this vibration, and we'll see where that goes next. And right now, I'm feeling this tingly sensation in the back in my lower back that's beginning to move upward.
Okay.
So I just want to report in
All right, good.
what's
Thank you.
happening. What's happening with me?
Okay, well, the thing is that everybody has their own unique experiences around the crystal skulls. For example, the one I showed, there's been several people who love that skull. Even after they met it years ago, they still feel the connection with it because the consciousness and the energy that's connected to it. One interesting story, so I'm just going to go spontaneously to explain this, is we work with, here in the Seattle area, a medium where her spirit guides come in and take over her body. And so every time we work with her, we always have some of our crystal skulls present, because I believe that their presence helps the energy of the session so the clearest information can come out. And we asked one of her guides, which I think was an extraterrestrial, say, what do you think about these crystal skulls? How do you observe them? And they also were talking about, in particular, the one I showed you. There was a cosmic being or a group of cosmic beings that were using that skull in order to have an interface with humanity. So it's like, different people who have met it. There's an energy that they're able to put through, because Chrystal is a transmitter and receiver of many frequencies of energy. This is why Chrystal was given to humanity. It's a really powerful tool beyond how it's being used in our modern electronics that we're using today to make the broadcast. So we believe it's the consciousness that selects the skull, which is based on who is the guardian, that you kind of work like a team, and then that consciousness comes through and starts working and helping people. Every crystal skull we have, of which we have 20, has a different personality and a different way that they work with people.
So that is the theme of the show, actually. What is the connection between crystal skulls and consciousness? And so I must ask, what is your interpretation or perception of consciousness or understanding?
You ask good questions, Steve.
It's all I do.
Yeah. Well, I have my own radio show, so I understand this.
And none of this is written down. This is how I do my shows. These questions come to me as we having this dialogue.
Right. Well, that's the best way. Consciousness to me is, how can I explain this? Well, we have to start with Creator. Creator is everything that exists, and Creator has given to all of us a spark of Him, herself. I mean, it's beyond the duality. And this is life. So to me, consciousness is life, but even in the minerals in the ground, in animals, everything we see has the spark of God, so it has consciousness. But human beings have more of an awareness of this consciousness, and actually that's why I think we could call ourselves God men and God women, is because when the golden age manifests, which is why the crystal skulls are here to assist us with this, we are going to be much more in touch with that part of ourselves that is in the spiritual realm. What has been shown to me recently is that we coexist on many levels at the same time. So for example, as I'm talking to you, I'm listening to those spiritual beings who help me in my work. They're whispering to me and they're helping me to speak the words to give to you. And so that's because part of my consciousness is on the level that they are, so it's a telepathic communication. And through many lifetimes, I've developed that gift, and it's come back. So they do that to me all the time. When I'm writing, when I'm talking, they're always around, and somehow it's like see, I got chills as I'm thinking about this.
Yeah, so am I.
Team effort. It's like a team effort,
Yeah.
And they go, okay, Joshua's on TV, so what kind of cool stuff can we get out through him to explain crystal skulls, but also to talk about where humanity's going into the future. So the return of the crystal skulls, this is my interpretation. When I met a me, which is this amethyst skull that kind of reminded me about my knowledge with it, it was saying that there is coming a time in the near future where humanity is going to shift and go into a higher space. I have a connection with a guy who calls himself Argus. And my understanding of Argus is he is who I will become in our future, in this lifetime. So there is no time and space, and this is basically the main experience since last year and this year that's happening to me a lot. I'm starting to understand how I can be in simultaneous places at once without losing my awareness and being able to focus.
Yeah, absolutely. We're actually demonstrating what you just said, Joshua, on all of our shows, meaning that we are demonstrating that when we are connected to ourselves, the real self, then time and space disappears, because time and space doesn't really exist. It's something we made up.
Mm-hmm.
for our own conveniences, and so that we can, things that are unexplainable, we can somehow put a box around it and explain it, and it's very evident on all the shows, and it has been like shown to me that an hour show goes by, um, like just a few moments, because
Yeah.
that's what happens. We completely forget about time and space, because we are in the present. In the present, which is the next moment, and then the next moment, and the next moment, there is no time and space.
Right. So because of the crystal skulls and my relationship with them, a project came up this year which has never happened before, I believe. And that was somebody put on the internet the following idea. They said, what if all the crystal skull guardians on this planet would just agree for 5 minutes to do a meditation together? What could happen? Because, see, we already do this kind of meditation on the 13th of every month. Monday, we have our next one. How many Crystal Skull Guardians join us in this meditation, I never know, but I would guess at least several hundred. But how many people actually have crystal skulls could be over 100,000 now. I mean, if you go on eBay and you look at how many crystal skulls are there, you see thousands all the time. So my question was to myself, what happened in the middle part of the 1990s that all of a sudden people wanted to have their own crystal skull? Not just people like me who are dedicated to research it and try to find the answers and share with people, but the average person on their spiritual path sees it as a tool to help them in awakening of consciousness. So this is called Crystal Skull World Day. It's on November 22nd. Anyone can participate. They don't have to have a crystal skull. It will be explained how they can participate. But we are expecting something amazing to happen on that day. We are aware of at least 15 public gatherings for that day. And we're also working with a Mayan daykeeper who is a crystal skull guardian that is talking to the elders, which we never usually have a chance to do. So hopefully something special is going to happen. So to me, bottom line, crystal skulls are here to activate consciousness in humanity.
Very, very interesting. And what when you say to activate consciousness, are you referring to? I'm just checking this out. Are you referring to perhaps opening our frontal lobe?
Well, I don't know physically what happens, but what I'm feeling is, let's
And
say
I'm talking about the third eye. People refer to it as
okay, yeah, it can be third eye, but it's basically what I see, or what Spirit's showing me right now to try to explain this simply, is that we have different bodies. We have our physical body, we have our etheric body, we have our astral body, we have higher bodies. So what happens is when consciousness is awakened, you start to have those bodies start to integrate with each other, because the vibrational frequency on the earth is raising every day. It's getting higher and higher and higher. And this is what is facilitating, and part of it has to do with the consciousness, living consciousness of Mother Earth. What it's facilitating is it's kind of helping all of us also to raise it. So, of course, you and I both know there are a lot of people that are already following their spiritual path. They're listening to intuition. They're following dreams. They're following visions. Some people have total memory recall of who they are, where they came from, what they did in between lifetimes, total communication with the spiritual beings that are around us. For myself, it's always been intuition, inner voice, and a feeling. So I've always gone with that. But those are getting stronger and stronger, and the understanding of no time and no space, I get it now. I mean, in other words, it's not just a concept that, oh yeah, that's probably true, it makes sense. I get it. I'm experiencing
you
it.
now have the experience of it. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So this is like the chicken and the egg question. So in terms of this process you're describing with the crystal skull, what comes first? The crystal skull comes to the human, or the human comes to the crystal skull?
My understanding and feeling about this is that there were living beings who chose to come to the earth as crystal skulls to have interaction with humanity long ago. So these would be very advanced beings. So I don't think one comes before the other. I think they're actually crystal skulls that exist on other dimensional planes, and it's kind of like they're living beings. Like there's a blue one, which I've written a whole book about, that I've never seen in person, in the physical, but it talks to me all the time. It's around me, and it gives me its history, and it tells me things. So I think that what happened. Okay, yeah. So what I'm getting is the spirit beings who are interested in helping humanity to advance and to remember who we are as divine children of God said, what tools can we bring to the earth that will help to wake up our brothers and sisters who are sleeping? Crystal
Awesome.
skulls.
Yeah,
Why?
yeah.
They look like us. They remind us, because I've talked to one medium who said the inside, if you could see yourself inside, you would be a crystal being. So it's kind of a projection of a part of ourselves in the physical, communicating with our spiritual bodies and helping to lift the veils to remember who we are. So I think they come together. There isn't one that's first or the other. In everything in God's universe, it all exists at the same time. So it's like someone
Yeah, so
just
I want to make sure, Joshua, you're not misunderstanding my question. So
Okay.
let me put it a different way.
Okay.
So you know the saying that when the pupil is ready, or when the same thing, when the teacher is ready, the pupil will show up, and vice versa.
Right.
That's what I mean. So are you saying? I just want to clarify this. Are you saying that when someone is ready, and open to consciousness, it is very possible, but that they will attract a crystal skull to themselves? Is that accurate?
Yes, that's what's happening. For
And,
example, some people will tell me, I don't know why I watched that show about crystal skulls. I don't know why I have to have one, but I just am so drawn. I just feel I have to learn everything that I can. I have to get involved. So there's a right timing, even for me.
yeah, you see, I already know, Joshua, why you're on the network, and why we're talking about crystals. I already know why.
Yeah.
And I know why we haven't had anybody on before about this, because we were not ready.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now we're ready.
Right, and it's because more and more are being found in the ground, more and more are being carved by the modern carvers. Some are being apported, which means they come from some other dimension into our dimension. We have one of those too. So it's totally involved in every aspect of the paranormal. But ultimately, when I met my first skull, Amid, this amethyst skull, it was about it's time to help humanity have total peace on the planet and remember who you are. So to me, that's what their message is. And what they do is they work together. In other words, I never have problems with the crystal skulls themselves. I have problems with the people who are the guardians, because some people have total different opinion about what they are, how they're used, what status they want to have. For the skulls, none of that matters. They love humanity. They're here to be of service. They're from Mother Earth. They're composed of material from Mother Earth, but they have a living consciousness that seems to be dimensional or galactic that works through it. So that's the simplest way I know how to describe my experiences for many years. Now, how do I prove that? Like I was on one of those documentaries, and what they did after I said this, and I knew that they wouldn't believe me, and I didn't know
What documentary were you on?
It was National Geographic, The Truth About Crystal Skulls, which I believe was aired in 2000 and end of 2011. So it's still out there, and they still have part of the video they took for me is actually on their website. So what did they do? They attached electrodes to a crystal skull, and they measured nothing, because the consciousness and the energy that's emanating from the skulls has nothing to do with electricity. It's energy that cannot be measured totally through devices that we have now, unless of course the government has a lot of secret devices, which is a whole other story.
Well, unless we knew how to measure consciousness, which I believe we don't know.
Right. It's like, when a person dies, they lose a little bit of weight. That's been measured. And at the exact moment the person dies, they lose a little bit of weight. Like when I saw the body of my mother after she passed away, her personality, her essence, the person that I knew and I loved wasn't there. It was totally gone. But I could feel her spirit around. And I was talking with her and trying to help her because she didn't believe in any of this stuff. You know, that at least part of her family, because I didn't cry until 6 months later, because I was experiencing her. She was still alive. Okay? And I
get it. Yeah.
And I feel her too, you know, and I know that she's already gone past a lot of things, you know, a lot of her blocks, a lot of her emotional pain that caused her death. And I know that she looks in sometimes, and I think she's proud of her son who's trying everything he can do to help to bring peace to this planet. And I know the crystal skulls are a key for this. So.
Well, I believe that's actually right on, Joshua. I believe that consciousness is the solution to what's happening on Earth.
Definitely.
I do not know, and I've been around for a while, like you have. I do not know anything else that even remotely comes close to a solution that could apply to everyone, and it's not a tool. It's our ability that we've had all along. We just forgot, and I believe that we need to remind people, and maybe that's another purpose for the crystal skulls, is to remind us who we really are.
Definitely. And that's what I've seen with our own personal skulls and some of the other ones, how they have affected people profoundly at times.
And how many do you have?
We have about 20 crystal skulls.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them have been made by modern carvers. I have one here that was not, so that people can see a different type of crystal skull. This one was found in the ground in China, or Mongolia. I think it was Mongolia. They were building a dam, and it wasn't just this one. There were a bunch of them. And they don't look like the modern ones that are being carved that are like the bone skull. It's kind of stylized. As a matter of fact, we're not totally sure. We haven't been able to find somebody to tell us exactly what material is in here. It looks like it might be part crystal and part some other type of stone. But the consciousness that speaks through this skull says that it was with the Mayans, that's where it originated. So when my partner Katrina presents Tachula, which is the name the skull gave her telepathically, she says that it tells her it's from the Mayan and then it went to Mongolia and China. And this is what I believe does happen. A lot of the very old skulls have traveled around the world and been with many of the indigenous people, and they recognized them as sacred tools, and so they protected them, and they don't talk about them very much. There are very few indigenous people I've met that are willing to discuss openly, if they know about some of the crystal skulls, you know, what they have and what they know. Example would be what's the Navajo, a part of the Navajo tribe in New Mexico, and they have a different name, and I don't know how to pronounce it. They are called the Skull People. And when I met one of the elders, he acknowledged that they have a skull. But even though I brought my own skull, and I thought maybe there might be a chance they could come together, they refused to show it because they said if they start showing it to the public, it would make the skull unclean, and it was their responsibility to make sure that the skull was totally pure. So I went back there before I had to leave, and I just went with my skull on their property, and I just linked in energetically with it, and it was really powerful. Plus, they also had on their property, which was very interesting, an alien handprint in the stone somewhere. And what the person said is there was a human hand in the stone, and there was an alien hand. When I put my right hand into the alien hand, I could hardly stand the energy of it. I mean, it was vibrating me so fast and so hard. I had to pull my hand away because it was that strong.
Interesting.
So I have a lot of stories like this, as you can imagine.
Yeah, I can imagine. So what I'm curious about is, have you been in the presence of, or have you had a crystal skull that that came from Atlantis?
I think the Mitchell-Hedges skull came from Atlantis. Um, I The reason I believe that is the first time that I actually saw it, I think was in 1985 or 86. It was at a crystal gathering in Dallas, Texas. And I remember um, the caretaker one time asked me to watch it for her, and I go, why is she asking me? But it was the skull was working through her, because prior to this I hadn't really started to dedicate myself to crystal skulls. And there I am sitting with what could be one of the most powerful crystal skulls on the planet, watching it, feeling totally comfortable as if I had done that before. And that's why I think that that skull may have come from Atlantis, because I could see it in the temples in Atlantis. Plus, the blue skull, which is the one I have the vision of, told me it was also in Atlantis. And what it told me was it started in Lemuria, and then when Lemuria sank, it was taken to Atlantis, and when Atlantis sank, then it came back to this part of Lemuria, which is in Peru. Peru used to be part of Lemuria, I believe. So it came back to an area where there was a temple, and that's what I had a vision of in the mountains in the northern part of Peru, where I had visions of the skull. Was this Lemurian temple that it used to be in. But it also told me that it went to Atlantis, and that there could have been either 12 or 13 temples, which each had a crystal skull. Because they talk about in Atlantis the possibility of 13 skulls. One in the center surrounded by 12, which keeps coming up everywhere. Like some people, George Hunt Williamson, early UFO contactee, who I have some connection with, I guess I'm a wanderer like he was, talks about that there are 12 planets around the sun. That there's 2 in front of Mercury we cannot see because of the light of the sun, and then I think most scientists agree Vulcan is beyond Mercury, so that would be your 12 planets. Plus, of course, there was another planet between Jupiter and Mars, Maldek, which blew itself up, which is an asteroid belt. But when that happened, then they brought in Venus. According to George Hunt Williamson, Venus was brought into the solar system. So it's all very interesting. So I would say Mitchell-Hedges skull definitely was in Atlantis, and perhaps this blue skull that keeps bothering me all the time and talking with me had a moment of time in Atlantis as well.
Fascinating. All right, so give us a little view into the research that you've been doing and how you actually conduct it.
Okay, well, when I was traveling in the U.S., when I was in Chicago and then in Europe, I found people who had different electronic devices. And what we tried to do is to see if we put a crystal skull around a person and we could measure their electrical magnetic field, what would happen. The device that I like to talk about the most, which medical doctors are allowed to use in Europe, and I'm not sure that American doctors are totally allowed to use it. They can use it for finding out information about their
wait, Joshua. American doctors are only allowed to write prescriptions.
Well, whatever that is. So anyway, there's this tool. I never work with doctors, so I don't pay much attention. So there's this tool called an what is it called? A meridian stress test system. Although now it has other names based on the companies making it. And what it is it's an electrode that they touch the meridian points on the hands and the feet, which are connected to different systems and chakras in the body. This device is very, very accurate, because your body is not going to lie what's going on inside of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
there's actually a certain sequence. There are people that have figured this out, that there's a certain sequence that you can touch those meridian points and actually also affect humans' ability to become open and have and begin their consciousness.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So anyway, part of this device measures how the person responds to the energy or energetically to whatever substance is put on there. So this is how to test what a person is allergic to, or what will help them, like what supplements will be good for them, etc. So what happened is Bill Holman, who is the guardian of the Mitchell-Hedges skull, I remember I had a meal with him. We get together periodically and compare notes. And he said, you're doing your test wrong. You need to blindfold the people so they can't see what they're being tested with. Because, you know, as soon as the crystal skull's there, people could have an expectation. Oh, the crystal skull's there. I'm going to feel better. I'm going to react. And we know from scientists our mind affects what happens in experiments. So we start blindfolding people, and we tested them with nothing, with the crystal.
Let me just put something in there, Joshua. It's a reptilian mind that's going to begin to play havoc on us and trying to protect us from the crystal skull.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe that. Absolutely. You're absolutely correct. So anyway, getting back, so we tested them with nothing, which is baseline, with a piece of crystal, the same type of crystal as the skull and the skull itself. And what we discovered is when the crystal skull was introduced, about 85 to 90% of their readings compared to the baseline either stayed the same or got better. When we compared it to the crystal, maybe it was only 60%. So we saw because of the skull. Now this had to be a skull that people were working with and using. So when we did it with the Mitchell Hedges skull for the Sci-Fi Channel, who did not show the results of this experiment, probably because it was too difficult to explain. You know, I had to write a report and try to explain to them what it meant. After people were subjected to the Mitchell Hedges skull, it didn't matter what else they were tested with, they were already pretty much in balance. Whereas if we worked with one of the new skulls, that effect may not have been as permanent. So what we're saying is the older skulls, the ones made long ago, possibly in Atlantis, Lemuria, gifts from the gods, have a very powerful energy that affects people for the rest of their lives. And the new skulls, if put in the presence of these older ones, like the one I held has been in the presence of I don't know how many, it brings their energy up, and he calls them their older brothers and sisters, past gifts. So like for example in Poland with Portal de Luz, that was the name of the skull I showed you. Mm-hmm. Portal de Luz had been with the amethyst skull that I met. The amethyst skull that I met, the owner of the skull had a problem with the blood vessels in his brain. And the doctor said to correct it, if we do it, then you'll become like a vegetable, which he did. But somehow he communicated to his family to put the amethyst skull to the back of his head, and he regained all of his abilities. So that skull was next to Portal de Luz. So when I was in Poland and I met 2 or 3 people with the same condition, they all chose Portal de Luz as the skull to hold for their private session, because they intuitively already felt that the healing energy to help their condition, which had been given from this older amethyst skull to the newer skull, was there. Same thing happened. The British Museum crystal skull, for many years, they wouldn't allow anybody to see it or touch it. Well, one time, I forget, I think it was around 2004, they had it in the Museum of Mankind. They let people come in like every Tuesday afternoon for about 3 months. And when we were there, the guardian lifted the lid of the glass case that it was held in so our hand could go in and touch it. So I wasn't there to experience the energy of the skull. What happened to me was one hand was on the British skull, one hand was on Portal de Luz, and I just felt my skull just giving all this healing energy because Portal de Luz was free to travel the world and to record all these special frequencies and energies and be in the presence of the other skulls, and he was transferring through me this energy. And then we got an email from a friend who said she had a healing in the presence of that skull. So
fascinating stuff. So Joshua, what in terms of as people are watching this broadcast live, either now live or later on as a replay, what should people consider if they are being called to get a crystal skull? What should be the process? What do you recommend for them to do? How to choose one, or do you recommend that when you're ready to have one, it will show up?
Well, I believe that's true when you're ready to have one. However, and this is going to sound very funny, we do not pick the crystal skulls. They pick us. So I think what happens is when the person is ready, if they're looking at, let's say they go on eBay and they're looking, there could be one that it's like they can't take their eyes off. It's almost like there's a connection between them and the image, and they know that they have to have it. Sometimes the skulls are gifts. Almost all the skulls we have have come into our lives as gifts. So everybody has a different way, but the key is once the skull comes, let's say somebody accepts, okay, I want to get one, or I accept one that's given to me. Then what they have to do is they have to spend time with it. And there isn't any set procedure how to do it. It's just going with what feels correct or what your intuition tells you. Do you want to sleep with it? Do you want to meditate with it? You know, in an eclipse, when there's a full moon, or do you want to be crazy like me and the crystal skull says, Dad, take me to the crop circles. I want to go to the crop circles. So we did. You know, so each one is kind of is brought to life and activated in a very unique way. So the key is not to try to figure it out, just enjoy having it and include it in your life, and eventually what happens is you create a partnership. Sometimes the skull just comes to help you with your life, and sometimes it comes to you so you become a crystal skull explorer and you have no choice. You have to go out and talk and speak and share, and you know, that's your role. And I don't mind that role because you know, whenever I'm talking in front of people, it feels like I'm a receptacle for some other energy that's speaking through me, and I like it. It feels good, and I know I've done this many times before in other lifetimes, so I'm just continuing all the problems and trouble I created before. I'm bringing it forward so that we can have peace. Because,
Okay.
you know, it's like you said in the beginning when we were meditating, we're here to have fun, enjoy ourselves. So you have to be who you are. So I like being the explorer, getting the information and sharing it and telling the stories and experiences, and you know, and there's a lot more experiences coming, I know, related to the paranormal. For example, there's a new book came out of the blue. I've never written novels, and a story came to me. And one medium that I talked to who might have helped me said, you know, this story you just told me about, how do you know you're not talking about your future, what's going to happen to you? So the story basically, in a nutshell, is the person goes back to Peru where I see the blue skull. Blue skull's there, and they go through like a stargate, and they come back with all the answers to all the questions we've ever had, plus a video records everything that happens to them on the other side. So that's all I'll say about that story. The ramifications of what could happen if that really did indeed take place, world peace could possibly happen from the information such a person brings back from those places. So you just have to see. So I
Yeah,
never know
fascinating.
what's so I never know what's going to happen next. And as an Aries, I need to have that excitement. You know, like something else is going to happen. Something else is going to happen. So I expect the next thing is that limitation thing that we talked about. That's going to be erased very soon. That finally the resources will be in place that I can go crazy and do all the projects that are living inside of me.
There you
Because
go.
it's a timing thing.
There you go. So tell me, what do you think? What Hollywood has got to do with all of this? Because they somehow I feel that Hollywood gets in touch with these sacred things one way or another, including all the alien stuff and all the paranormal stuff. Somehow they know about this stuff, you know, a lot sooner than the public does.
I have no doubt, but what I will tell you is one of my friends who is a Crystal Skull Guardian, he guarded some of our presidents. I think Reagan was one of them. Maybe the elder Bush was another. He saw what they have about UFOs, which he is forbidden to talk about. But he said to us privately, which I believe is absolutely true, he said, you know all this stuff that you see in the movies, the Stargates and traveling to other planets? He said, all of that stuff really exists. And I've even heard a comment, and I don't know where I heard this from, that what you saw like in Star Wars, we're already way beyond that. So I think what's really happening right now, this time that we live in, is the truth is coming out one way or another, and it cannot be stopped. Because humanity is going to go into a golden age, and then our planet will go into golden age, and then all the planets in the solar system is going to go into golden age, and the Earth is not going to be allowed to hold back the other planets wherever we're headed. It's like Arthur C. Clarke showed Jupiter becoming a second sun of our solar system. That is definitely a possibility. When you have two suns in your solar system, then you're in a higher vibrational state. a higher existence. So a lot of I used to think that, it would be impossible on this level of reality where we have such density here that we could know all this stuff, but it's all coming out now. Anything you can imagine. I mean, I'm totally amazed every time I go on YouTube and watch videos, what they're talking about, or on television, these specials. So all of it's coming out right now. Time travel exists, contact with extraterrestrials. Uh, the sensing, I didn't tell you about this, but there was one time where I was hit by a car when I lived in Las Vegas, and I was in a coma for 2 days. And I remember I had to go to a meeting on the inner planes, and I have a couple of pictures of that, but I still don't know everything that happened to me. It's not permitted, I guess, quite yet. But the one thing that I came back from that experience is our cosmic friends eventually are going to do something which I call a positive 9/11. It's going to be like mass sighting. Like, people like you and I, we can go outside, look at the clouds. We know when the UFOs are there. But Mount Rainier, which is where some of the first UFOs were sighted and talked about publicly, we see those clouds around that mountain like almost every other day. We know what those clouds are. But there's something that's going to happen. Now, I don't know exactly what it is. Maybe I was shown this and they blanked my memory of it. I just have this sensing there's going to be something, some event that nobody can deny happen that's just going to wake people up, and it's going to be magnificent. And whether it'll be with UFOs or crystal skulls or somebody who died that comes back, because of course we don't die, I mean, I don't know. That's the exciting part for me to be here at this time, is to wait for that. And then a lot of people that who thought you were nuts and everything, they'll come up to you and say, you know what you were telling me about 5, 10 years ago? What you believe in, that I thought you were nuts? I need to know everything you know now. I want to become your student. Please share with me. So I think we're coming to that point very soon. Now the medium that we worked with, who identified with portal cosmic beings that are working through, also made this comment. I don't know if it's true or not, and every time I talk to that being through the medium, he says the same. In 2015 exists the possibility there will be 2 Earths, one in the third, fourth dimension, and one in the 5th. The one in the 5th is totally at peace. Like what the Bible talks about, people disappearing, they're going into that 5th dimensional Earth. And purportedly, this is where the Bigfoots are. I met a man who was taken into another dimension where he described it like this by Bigfoot. And there are supposed to be some civilizations who have disappeared that we can't explain. Where did they go? They may be in that dimension also. So that's another comment that she made, that I cannot, when you hear things sometimes and you say, I don't know if it's true or not, but it stays with you. It won't leave you alone. It's like there's something there, and that's what I feel. There's something about this idea of different Earths. So maybe the crystal skulls will become one of the portals that will help some people to go into these other dimensions. I don't know. But
so I just want to go back to Hollywood for a second, Joshua. So what was the movie that I remember? It's the first and only time I saw a crystal skull. There was a movie, probably goes back like 20 years or more.
Are you talking about House?
No.
Okay, because the last Indiana Jones had a crystal skull.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, I'm talking about Indiana Jones, yeah.
Okay, that was in 2008.
Okay.
So what they did is some of the information they showed about the crystal skulls was true, some was not. I think he found the skull in Peru, although it's not totally clear from the movie. They mentioned some of the other ones, like the British Museum skull and the Mitchell Hedges skull were briefly mentioned in the movie. But then the point of it is they went to some other city, and there was a UFO that was buried underneath the city. And as soon as they brought that skull, there were skeletons there that became crystal, and then there were 13 skulls. And then they merged into one living alien being, and then the UFO took off. So it's kind of like when they brought that skull there, that crystal skull, which didn't look like our skull, and they were throwing it in the movie like it was, a little softball. If there was a skull that size, it would have been 30 or 40 pounds. The one I showed you is 10. I cannot throw it at people like they were throwing that skull, so it had to be plastic in the movie. But that was basically the essence of that story. And then they were showing that it had a magnetic effect on people and control them. And I don't believe that this is really what the skulls are about. They're here to, bring forward our gifts, remind us who we are, get us in touch with our soul, and bring more joy into our life, really.
Fascinating stuff. So, go
Is
ahead.
it possible we could mention our website for people if they want to know more?
I was just about to do that.
Okay, good. Then we're in sync. Perfect.
Yeah.
So the main website that we have is very simple, crystalskullexplorers.com. But also I want to send people to the website for Crystal Skull World Day, that special day, November 22nd, when all the Guardians are going to get together. And that's just crystalskullworldday.com. But of course, we have a link on our site. So just crystalskullexplorers.com, and they can find everything. Our radio show, the World Peace Meditations that we do once a month, our free book, our free newsletter. We try whatever we can. And now that I've had the experience of Hang On Air, you better believe I'm going to start doing that also. Some
there you
talks, and I'm going to try to get some of this Crystal Skull Guardians who support Crystal Skull Day to see if we can kind of have a little chat doing this. So it's pretty easy. I thought it was harder than this.
No, it's not hard. It's not hard at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So awesome. So what do you wanna leave the viewers with? I mean, they're gonna make up their own mind.
Of course.
but I know that a lot of people, have a really tough time dealing with anything that they cannot, identify with their five senses.
Right.
And yes, the crystal skull is a material thing, but I'm not even relating myself to the material thing. I already feel its energy. So from that perspective, what do you want to leave the viewers with in terms of what's possible when people actually develop a relationship with one of these crystal skulls in terms of the energy of it?
Okay. The first thought that comes to my mind is when I saw this amethyst crystal skull of me, a part of me recognized that the prophecies of a golden age were going to happen. So the way I would suggest for people to look at it, although the crystal skulls, there are some crystal skulls I've met where they recorded the energy of man's inhumanity to man. They were used in sacrifice, like by Mayans and Aztec. And the crystal skull doesn't, choose only good energy. It's going to record what goes on around it. It's sort of like a collector. But I think that the higher purpose of why the skulls were introduced to humanity is to be a tool to help us to remember who we are. So anyone that might be open, let's say, my discussion today with you gets them curious. I want to see for myself if this guy Shapiro is nuts. That's what happened. Some people, after they listened to me on the National Geographic, they wrote on the internet, he's crazy. What he's talking about, he's nuts. Maybe they won't think I'm so crazy. Maybe something I said touched them, makes sense. They should have an experience. Now, the experience can come in two ways. They can either go to a meeting where one of these guardians, and some of the guardians have these very old skulls, I believe, and just see what happens to them. Or they could contact us if they want, and we could help them to get one, that works for them. But they have to have the experience. It's like there was an elder that I met. He's passed away, but he had some problem with his heart, and he got a non-quartz skull. And he told me that when he was having a heart attack, that skull was levitated from a table far away from where he was and floated in the air and landed on his heart. And there was a tremendous heat, and somehow it helped to heal him. Okay, so this is a Native American elder. I can't believe he would make something like this up. They have a lot of experiences. So reason I'm sharing this is there's a potential if a person feels, there's something here. I don't know what it is. I got to find out. Find out. What do you have to lose? Either the two things can only happen. Nothing changes, in which case you just had an experience. Or, like what has happened for me and many people, their whole lives were profoundly changed because a crystal skull entered it. So is it worth it to try to get one to see what would happen? A new adventure for sure, no matter what. So you can't
Yeah.
lose with that.
Yeah. So what you're talking about is actually people having a resonance with or resonating with
Yeah,
whatever it is that we were talking about. And what we were talking about in the whole hour is what is the connection between Crystal's calls and consciousness. And more people are interested in finding out about consciousness, of course, because that's where we are all heading. So I really enjoyed the show. You were absolutely fantastic,
thank you.
Joshua. I just want to say that I had no idea how this show was going to turn out, and I feel completely connected with you and the Crystal Skulls. I don't need an explanation, because when I listen to my intuition and when I'm connected to the energy, it doesn't need to be explained, especially not by human words. So I love what you do, and you certainly have been you've been at a great service of humanity, and I know that you're going to continue to be every day, and I absolutely support you in what you're doing. And what I also want to say to any of the viewers, that if there's anything that Joshua said or I said that touched and moved and inspired you, please keep coming back to consciousevolutionmedia.com. Keep watching these very interesting broadcasts, because we are doing things that are outside of everybody's comfort zone. And if you want to grow, but I can guarantee you, Joshua, that what we talked about this hour is outside of many people's comfort zone, and that's a good thing, because that's the only place that I know that there's going to be growth. So if you were touched, moved, and inspired, also go to Joshua's website and go ahead and mention that to us again.
CrystalSkullExplorers.com.
There you go. And I wish everybody a beautiful Friday evening and a great long weekend, because Monday is a federal holiday. So everybody, go make friends with a crystal skull is what I can recommend. How about you?
Absolutely. You can't lose. You can't lose.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful experience.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you so much, Joshua.
Thank you,
have a lovely evening.
And for you too. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you all, and we'll see you next time. Same place, same time.
Okay.
Thank you all.